Hey all, so back with another Spotlight with Context. This time we are looking at Gladiator, the winner of Summoner's Choice 2023. To touch briefly on his prestige, it's good. He's about on par with Absorbing Man, but that's not going to move the needle if you are actively chasing top 5. For anyone else, if you want to invest in him, he will reward you with decent prestige all the way up to Sig 200, so that part is nice. Moving on to the champion attributes, 3.5 sounds quite fair to me. This is somebody with a decent amount of base health, access to quite a bit of armor for damage mitigation, and a couple of other things that are going to let them reduce damage. But for the most part, those things have to be earned or maintained. And so he's not going to feel like King Groot, right? There are definitely ways for him to take damage. 4 in damage is extremely fair. It ramps up there, but the thing about ramping damage is that it means you spend some time not ramped. And so you do kind of have to put in some work to get really impressive numbers from this guy, but they are there. And with just a little bit of work, you get really solid numbers. So I think, yeah, 4 is very fair. This is not CGR, but significantly above average. Ease of use, 2.5 also sounds correct. You can get decent results out of Gladiator with very little effort, in my opinion. But there is kind of one key hook that gets you, I'd say, about 80% of the kit. We'll talk about that when we get there. And then there is a skill ceiling that in certain matchups can get you quite a bit more damage. And I think that is probably going to feel out of reach to a lot of people. But I also have this suspicion that Gladiator may be one of those teaching champs that's kind of going to get the community to level up on this a little bit. And we'll talk more about that as well when we get there. Overall, though, you can get most of what you need out of him with very little skill investment, and then you can get some really cool stuff with a fair bit more. Utility 3 out of 5. He does have some interesting immunities, those are relevant. And then there's just a lot of different little things at different points in the kit. You're not going to have all of them up at the same time. Like there's a miss counter, but it's kind of mutually exclusive with the evade counter. There's some unblockable, some unstoppable. There's a lot of RPG tools in here. And like I said, you're probably not going to have access to all of them at once, but you can keep a couple of them up quite a bit of the time. And so there are going to be some challenges that he is very good at answering. And then Defender Strength 2.5, there's some tricks here. Especially in battlegrounds where he can stall out the fight and potentially get a bit of a win just from time. But this is, like, he's not primarily a defender. There's not a lot going on there. There's not much of a kill threat as long as you learn his special evades. Yeah, not the next Penny Parker. So moving on to strengths and weaknesses, fight control is absolutely right. This is somebody who's very good at landing their heavies when they want to, at controlling the arena, backing up their opponent. You have unstoppable, unblockable, intimidate. You have vigilance and cold snap, so you don't have to worry about miss or evades slowing you down. Incinerate helps you hit into block as well. That's not really kind of a key part of his kit, but it does combo nicely with the Intimidate. In general, Gladiator is one of those characters where their utility is all pointed in one direction. It's kind of, you have abilities that you intend to make me stop hitting you for a second. I'm going to turn those off so that he can just go, go, go. It lends itself to an aggro playstyle without you necessarily having to thread a ton of needles to maintain it. So, very nice for that. Easy openings. This is somewhat related to the above. Unblockable is obviously a great way to get openings both for combos and for special attacks. And Gladiator can chain his combos into a heavy with a stun. Both of those things are going to make the fight much, much easier for you. And I like the way this is put, a short but extendable ramp. So the the damage and the utility does ramp up within a given fight, but you get all of it pretty quickly. It's a long, long way from somebody like Aegon, where you really have to put in work before things come online. They get rolling pretty quickly. However, as the quest goes on, you are going to get the ability to extend your runway further and further, and you still get that utility early, but your damage ceiling goes higher and higher, which is, I think, a really nice way to approach a ramping character here. For weaknesses, it does mention Nullify, Fate Seal, Stagger. They will slow down Gladiator really badly because they get rid of his confidence buffs. But there is, he does have some resistance to Nullify. But at the same time, like, these are weaknesses that don't really matter to him that badly. For the most part, you're not going to want to use a Cosmic with a lot of buffs against Nullify. If you really need to for node reasons, he probably has enough resistance that you can manage it if you really need to. And then on defense, like we said, he's just not really that much of a defender, so I wouldn't really consider these weaknesses. If you need to deal with his buffs, you usually can just kind of by hitting him. So, also special attack knockdowns. This kind of goes with what I just said. If you're already hitting him, you're throwing special attacks. On defense, you are going to keep him from ramping. There are going to be little annoyances that slip through, but for the most part, you don't have to worry about him ramping on defense. On offense, you really do not want to get knocked down with a special, though. So, try and make sure that in your go-go-go aggro playstyle, you are not opening yourself up to getting smacked with a special and knocked down. It's very much going to hurt your confidence. Moving on to the actual abilities, Always Active is very short and sweet. 200% increased ability accuracy to personal buffs. I emphasize the increased there because this does not mean the buffs have 200% ability accuracy. This means that they have the normal 100 plus that 200. So for a total of 300, they will get around Rintra's Neutralize. It's almost like that was intentional. And so this does mean that somebody like Tigra is not going to be able to get around his buffs. He's not immune to Neutralize, so again, Tigra and Rintra can ramp against him. They still apply their effects. Tigra can pause her senses. Rintra can build his mystical charges. It's not that they're useless, it's just that you're not going to be using them to stop his personal buffs. That is still important, though, because it means that if you are facing him on a node that has dangerous buffs, like, I don't know, personal space regen, then those neutralizers will still answer the node's buffs. So it's not a full shutout by any means. Additionally, he is immune to Power Drain and Power Burn, so that standard anti-tech, you don't have to worry about those abilities. Moving on to heavy attacks. Like we said, Gladiator has the ability to chain combos into heavy attacks. So as long as you haven't ended your combo, as long as you haven't used your fourth light attack or your second medium, you can go to charge a heavy attack and it stuns the opponent. Same as Doom, same as Wasp, America Chavez, etc. And then when the heavy attack hits, as long as the opponent is below 2 bars of power, you get a non-stacking Intimidate debuff. So, very important that it does not apply above 2 bars, and that is for 2 reasons. One is to make sure that if the opponent is getting close to 3 bars, you're not causing them to be more passive and potentially preventing them from throwing their special 2 and pushing them to their special 3, right? That would work against you. But the other thing it's doing is preventing you from risking that by throwing the Intimidate and hoping that they won't throw their special 3. So I'm going to say that out loud. His Intimidate is not intended to keep the opponent off their special 3. But like I said, that also means you don't have to worry about the AI turtling under it as much, and so you can pretty safely spam his heavy whenever you want to. Additionally, that Intimidate is only 2 seconds, so that if you need to land this heavy but you don't necessarily want him to stay passive, you can just allow it to fall off. but it is paused every time Gladiator dashes forward or strikes the opponent or their block. So if you're being aggressive, you can get quite a bit more than 2 seconds out of it. So, now to the bulk of Gladiator's kit, Confidence. What is it? How do you build it? So, Confidence buffs on their own have a limit of 24 to start. They are indefinite, so they last forever, and they have 3% potency. Now, if this were if this were in-game, rather than on Aunt May or looking at the spotlight, it would tell you that Confidence buffs increase your attack rating and your armor rating by that potency. So every Confidence buff on you is going to give you 3% extra attack rating, and I want to clarify this part. Every Confidence buff on you is going to give you an amount of armor rating that would be equal to 3%. I'm stating it that weird way because it's important to remember that 10 Confidence buffs may be 30% attack. They are not 30% armor. Because the way our game works means that you get that flat number that would be 3% armor, you add it together 10 times, and then that number is fed back into the diminishing returns curve, and it gives you some lower number. So 10 Confidence buffs are probably more like, 22 to 25% armor off the top of my head. So they do still make him tankier, but I just want to be clear with that off the top, because 3 times 24 looks like it could be 72% armor, which is a lot. It's going to hang out more around the 50 area. So you're only cutting hit damage in half. Still very, very good. Additionally, both of these potencies are increased by 1% flat when fighting on the final boss node, so 3% attack goes to 4, 3% armor also goes to 4. And you can't get any buffs once you're past your limit. If you strike the opponent with a heavy attack, that gives you 2 Confidence buffs. That becomes much, much easier because Gladiator can chain his combos into heavies. So remember, that means you can ramp as quickly as just going medium, heavy, because the medium starts the combo, is not an ender, allows you to charge that stun. Additionally, while the opponent is suffering from Gladiator's Personal Intimidate, you get another Confidence buff every time you hit their block with a light or a medium. So this is going to allow you to go like medium, heavy. It knocks them down, intimidates them, they're more likely to block. You immediately chase them, you hit on their block for medium, light, but don't end your combo because then they might hit you back. And now you're at 6, right? You do this a few times in succession, you can get to that limit of 24 pretty easily. Now, as a defender, Gladiator is just going to gain Confidence buffs every 2 seconds. It says, okay, sure, if you're knocked down by a special attack, this pauses, but you don't really need to, because look at the very next bullet. When struck by any attack other than the final hit of a special, remove 1 Confidence buff. So as long as you're just hitting Gladiator on defense, you're keeping his confidence under control. Makes sense, right? As an attacker, additionally, you don't want to get hit. Very simple. And then when you are struck by the final hit of a special, you lose that many more Confidence buffs. It's 4 per level of the special. So if you do special 3 with Gladiator, half your ramp is gone. There goes 12. Try not to do that. But also notice that this removal doesn't trigger while Gladiator is unstoppable, because he has an unstoppable later in his kit. This is going to allow you to kind of play around things and intentionally get hit sometimes. So on top of that base confidence benefit of increased attack and armor, once you get to 12, more abilities come online. When your special attacks activate, you get an Embolden passive, which is going to give you immunity to Nullify, Stagger, and Fate Seal for 5 seconds. This is what I meant when I said if you're taking a node like Buffet or Power Stack, Gladiator may actually be able to deal with it. Because you're going to run into some problems off the bat, right? Because you're not going to have access to this Embolden. But once you get ramped, you do. It's a passive, then it allows you to gain your buffs. Power Snack in particular would be spooky because getting hit by specials is so bad for him, but something like Buffet, you could probably ramp enough to turn it off and then close the fight out. Just something to keep in mind if you absolutely need it. Additionally, because this is gated behind 12 confidence buffs, you're probably not going to see this on defense all that much, so you don't really have to worry about staggering or nullifying away Gladiator's buffs on defense. Striking the opponent with a heavy attack in addition to granting you confidence buffs is now also going to give you an unblockable buff for 2 seconds, but then that is paused during Gladiator's special attacks. So you knock them down with a heavy, and then immediately go into a special, so that the special hits while unblockable the whole time. Very, very fun. Feels a little bit like Dragon Man to me, or if you are used to playing potentially Kate Bishop or Cersei, both of them have that ability to knock the opponent down and then follow up with a special from a distance. Gladiator has a bit of that feel. It's my personal favorite mechanical part of the kit. And then this unblockable has a cooldown for 5 seconds. So you can't spam it, but pick your moments when you have specials ready. Feels great. While you're unblockable, and this does actually go for any unblockable buff, not just personal ones, so this is going to be cracked in incursions. That's going to be fun. Heavy and special attacks deal an additional 90% of their damage as physical damage. So this is kind of like an invisible trauma effect on the opponent, right? Like Hulk or Red Guardian has. This is just going to amplify your damage, more physical. Excellent. Remember, because your unblockable buff is paused during specials, you can get a lot of mileage out of it by following up your heavies with those specials. And then I mentioned there was a ceiling that isn't going to be worth going for most people. That is Ultra Confidence here. It is very fun. It is very cool. As was said on the live stream, the inspiration from this came directly from Dragon Ball Z. This is kind of the idea of punching straight through the Kamehameha, right? So, the unstoppable buff that you get elsewhere in the kit is now paused during the opponent's special attacks, so you can stay unstoppable during their specials, and you become immune to stun effects, so you don't have to worry about their specials stunning you and suddenly taking you out of your fun. And what that allows you to do is that now you can strike into the opponent during their special attacks. Now it says during or immediately after, right? And so the way most people are going to do this is just going to be punishing specials and getting this free burst damage. You get that physical damage. It's really nice, right? It just means, okay, you were already probably punishing specials as openings. Now that you're fully ramped with Gladiator, doing so does burst damage to the opponent, scales with his increased attack rating. Feels great. Nice little reward. But if you want to go a little bit further, then you can look for places to attack into the opponent, as long as you're actually getting close enough to them that if they weren't in their special, you would hit them. You will also deal this damage. And you can safely charge into these specials because you're taking less damage from them. Now, the obvious way this looks like it's going to come together, and what you've already probably seen on the deep dive, is you'll be unstoppable. Your unstoppable will be paused, and you are just wailing into the opponent while they're attacking you, doing a ton of damage to them, taking very little. Looks really cool. Most of the time, I don't think that's even how you're going to use this, and I don't just mean just punishing specials. I mean, the way I see this happening more is against opponents like Void or Longshot, although don't use Gladiator against Longshot, where they throw a special like Void Special 1, where there's a blast, and then there's a pause where you can dash in, and then another blast. That's where you're going to dash in, you're going to whiff the attack, and you're going to do some damage. And so it allows you to do this 2 or 3 times per special instead of just once. Squeeze that little bit of extra damage out, but safely. You don't necessarily have to worry about the unstoppable. Of course, if you do want to do the really insane things here and not worry so much about safety, don't let me stop you. It is very fun. I do want to shout out, though, that remember Gladiator loses confidence when struck. So if you are trying to pull off this ultra confidence and you have not increased his confidence limit above 24, then getting hit is going to drop you down below 24 confidence and take away your ability to benefit from this. So just keep that in mind. Be very careful if you don't have the Unstoppable to kind of safeguard your confidence. And this is probably something you only really want to do after the first fight of a quest or after your special 3, because both of those things improve your limit, and we'll get to those pretty soon. So moving on to special 1, this is where we finally see the Unstoppable buff we've mentioned a few times. Obviously the goal with this is to get into ultra confidence and then have it pause when your opponent throws a special, use it to do all of your cool stuff. But even if you don't do that, this has serious utility, right? Because what this means is that, like, my personal favorite use for this is you can now use Gladiator that much more easily against intercept nodes. Because you'll throw the special 1, that doesn't knock them down, but then after that, you dash back, you block, and you use it to counterpunch, like Killmonger or Juggernaut, right? The opponent dashes in, they hit your block, you're unstoppable, you immediately hit them, boom, you get credit for an intercept on like an ebb and flow intercept node, either in war or in battlegrounds. You've now removed the protection, gotten the fury, and the fight can continue. So immediately a nice piece of utility there. On top of that, you're going to be inflicting 12-second cold snaps. They do damage, that's nice. Cold snap also stops evade. That's going to be very nice extra piece of utility for Gladiator. On to the special 2, you'll get a vigilance buff on activation. It lasts for 20 seconds, but it's paused through the special attack. So reminder, vigilance bypasses miss. This means the special 2 itself can never miss. Sorry, Tigra. But it also means that you get 20 seconds of bypassing miss after the end of this. Pretty good uptime on the utility for that. And then you are also going to get a bunch of incinerates. Incinerates, of course, are mostly damage, but a reminder that they also remove perfect block chance and reduce block proficiency by a multiplicative 50%. And so if you are already hitting into your opponent while they have that Intimidate on them, reducing their block proficiency, this is going to take that further, and you may actually be able to do some real damage into block with Gladiator. Not Corvus levels, but it'll be significant. Additionally, both of these damage over time effects can apply through block when Gladiator is a defender, and so you're probably going to want to make sure that you are comfortable with those evades. If you're not comfortable with those evades, bait the special 1 out more and just deal with the 4-second unstoppable, because the special 2 evade is significantly trickier. Moving on to the special 3. We already kind of talked about how this can increase the limit. Here you have it. Increases the limit by 4. This only happens once per fight, but that is going to give you that extra cushion. Now you can build your confidence up to 28. That allows you to get hit a couple times without losing the benefits of ultra confidence. It's going to make Gladiator significantly easier to use up there above the line. You're also going to get a power gain buff, giving you a bar of power over 5 seconds. So this is going to set you up really, really well to chain into a heavy, get your unblockable, and then go straight for your special 1, nice and quick after the special 3. Now we're on to the signature ability, Even Further Beyond. So winning a fight as an attacker with more than half of your health, and this is going to be one of those scaling things, right? So kind of like Sentry, you're going to need more and more of your health the lower your sig level is going to add 4 to Gladiator's persistent confidence limit up to a max of 8. So basically, the first 2 times you win a fight with enough health in a quest, you're going to get the benefit of the special 3 for the rest of the quest. And so this means that you can just ramp right up past 24 without throwing the special 3, and you have all of that extra room above the ultra confidence threshold. It also means you have access to that much more attack and armor. Really powerful ability there. Like I said, it just gives you more runway on your ramp. Additionally, it's going to improve the vigilance that you get from your special 2. All of your hits are going to deal true damage while it's up, which, reminder, true damage bypasses armor and resistances. I think most people know that now. What I've seen some people forget is that every champion has a certain amount of armor, with a few exceptions, like Man-Thing. And so against most champions, this true damage is actually more damage, because whenever you're not landing crits, which themselves bypass a good chunk of armor, this is going to allow you to ignore that little bit that's there. So, because most champions sit at around 20% armor, that means by removing the 20% reduction, you're effectively giving your non-critical hits about a 25% boost on average just by having true damage up. So that's pretty darn good, right? If you could turn on a 25% Fury for yourself at all times, you would. But the other thing is that your opponent's armor up effects are going to have their ability accuracy reduced. Kind of like that part of Armor Shatter from Medusa or Arcus, except this works on effects, not buffs, and so is also going to hit passives. So you're going to be able to shut down the ability accuracy of Iron Man Infinity Wars, armor ups. I believe this works on future Ant-Man as well, because you get by the buffs themselves, but the way future Ant-Man normally works is that then they get a passive. I believe this gets past that. I actually haven't tested it, but I'm still going to say it on this spotlight anyway. And yeah, just really powerful ability for dealing with techs, because armor's annoying. And then we move on to our synergies. So you've got your kind of standard attack and armor rating ones. Gladiator is a leader, and so he's going to help out the rest of the team. Just crit rating with a few of the others. Got Punk's Pizzazz, very fun. Heavy attacks are passively unblockable. That may sound like a weird ability because heavy attacks can't be blocked anyway, right? Except that Stand Your Ground exists, and it's very annoying. Sorcerer Supreme and Hulk Ragnarok may not be spamming heavies a lot to get through Stand Your Ground, but it probably comes up from time to time, and it definitely comes up for Gladiator, so this actually is a nice little ability. And as long as the other characters are alive, heavies are going to get hit a little bit harder or be more likely to crit. Additionally, somebody else is going to be coming soon with this, but we're not going to talk about that here. The Annihilator synergy, again with a coming soon. All of these synergy champions are going to gain a non-stacking Fury buff, and the Fury buff is going to get stronger for each person on the team. So if you only have one other person here, then assuming everyone on your team is alive, then this is actually a 10% Fury. It's not bad, it's not amazing. If you have all 5 of them, once the last person comes out, you're looking at a 25% Fury. Like we already said, that's pretty significant. Then we move on to great guys here. The pun, obviously, is that this is with Icarus, Sentry, and Hyperion, who are the other supermen. Great guys. Get it? No, I love it. But all of the synergy champions, while far away from the opponent, getting an indefinite unstoppable buff. This probably sounds pretty weird, since the unstoppable buff gets removed once you re-enter striking distance, so what does that help, right? Except that, I actually had to ask, like, what the point of this synergy was when we were in the design phase, and Gladiator's designer explained, well, you know, it makes them bulletproof, like Superman, and then it just instantly clicked, and I adore this. So it's not necessarily going to let you charge through a hail of bullets, because at some point in there you're going to get close enough that you lose the unstoppable, and then you risk getting knocked down. But what it does let you do is, if a special normally wouldn't be punishable because you're too far away and you're blocking the projectiles, now this synergy allows you, when that last projectile hits your block, to counter punch against it and charge in and be more likely to punish it. This is something a lot of people have been doing with Killmonger for a long time to get credit for punishing special attacks to get his True Strike. You don't get that kind of mechanical benefit with any of these characters. Well, you do with Gladiator, but not with the other three. But it's still always great for the tempo of a fight to be able to punish specials you otherwise couldn't. So very cool, flavorful synergy there. And as I just alluded to, for Gladiator in particular, punishing more specials is literally more damage. So this is a really cool synergy. And that's Gladiator. I know there's already been a lot of buzz about him. You've probably seen a number of videos. I think he's very, very fun to play. I don't think he's much of a defender, like I've said. I've seen a lot of people concerned that he's basically going to be another Gallon. It's like, oh, well, Gallon's awful on defense if you don't have a neutralizer, which is true. This is not that, right? Gladiator has a few quirks on defense. Like I said, I consider him, like, almost a complete non-issue, especially if you have staggers or nullifies. Hood will run right through him. Long shot will tear him apart. Like, there's so many answers to him. He's just specifically a really bad option for Tigra, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, I don't think you have to worry about him on defense. He may slow some people down, especially if you wind up without a counter, without a Mystic that you're comfortable using on offense, and I like that in something like Battlegrounds. I'm sure there are going to be a couple places in War where he might give people some pause, but in general, he's an attacker, and as an attacker, I think he's quite fun. Like I said, most of his utility is pointed in the same direction of allowing you to continue to attack, and that usually lends itself to pretty fun characters. So let me know in the comments what you're thinking of Gladiator, how you're feeling about him, and looking forward to discussing that with all of y'all. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and take care.